That was a great session, Anthony. I had a glimpse of it a little bit. So thanks so much for sharing some of the major foundations, especially when working with widgets, aligning them, the rows, the columns, and everything. That's pretty much nice. And thanks so much, Hannah, for the welcome today. And I'm going to speak about building custom widgets and dynamic UIs. I'm trying to, yeah, I hope you can see me okay. So I'll give a brief greetings with my basic German. So, hallo, ich heiße Maureen, ich komme aus Kenia, aber ich lebe in Berlin. I hope it's a good.
Ja, ich liebe im Ahlen.
Yeah, yeah, that was
My
something I was.
level in German, the same. Ein bisschen Deutsch, Entschuldigung.
Yeah, Entschuldigung. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'll just go straight to my talk. And yeah, it's good that we've had like foundation about how to work with widgets and everything. And now this talk is more of a build up of the previous talk on how to build your custom widgets and also dynamic UIs in Flutter. And this is a glimpse of the agenda. I kept my talk as short as possible because it was only 30 minutes. But since we've also had an intro from the previous talk, I'm just going to brush through some of the basic intros or explanations. So this is some of the topics we have in my agenda today. One, what are widgets in Flutter? The difference between built-in and custom widgets, stateless and stateful widgets, why custom widgets, best practices, and finally the demo. And this is something I've done before, especially when getting started with Flutter from the early days, whereby you are on the learning zone. So you are trying to get the info on how to put your hands together into different things while at the same time learning. So have you ever repeated the same widget again and again? From my previous experience when I was just getting started with Flutter, I would say yes, because I didn't know the best structure to use. And I was on the learning zone where I just wanted something to work. And that feeling that you just write your code and you run it on your mobile or web and it works, you can visually see that. So, yeah, we've been here before. And this is where the custom widgets come to play. Um, this is a picture I took from one of the YouTube channels. It's called Widget Wisdom YouTube. You could check it out if you have time. So this is a sample mobile app that has different types of widgets on the UI. So on the left, you could see card one, card two, card three, card four. And it's all about the devices that you could use on your home device. From this, for example, the lamp, the air conditioner, the TV, the robot. So if you want to create such a widget, especially, or rather create such an app where you have different functionalities, but they say at the same time the widgets around the app can be repeated several times. For example, this, depending on your UI or your theme. So it does not make sense to write the lamp, for example, or the air conditioner code 20,000 times, like several times, or the TV section of the code several times, or the robot vacuum several times. So here is why custom widgets comes in. So with this, you can just simply create one card widget that contains these properties: the lamp, the air conditioning, the text, and the icons, the trailing and the leading icons. You can have that in the same widget, and then you can simply reuse it across where you want to use it. And this is easier because now you can always have one point, reference point, in case there's a bug or there's like an improvement, and you have everything in one place. and you can still reuse the same thing different places. But before that, just a quick look through on what widgets are in Flutter. I believe most of us already have an idea of what this is, but if you are totally new to this, the widgets are building blocks of Flutter applications. For example, texts, cards, buttons, containers, etc., etc. So if you can see from this previous screenshot, the building blocks of this entire UI are simply the texts, the containers, for example, or the cards. So those small things that make up the entire app are what we call widgets. And we have two different types of widget, mostly two types of widgets according to the Flutter docs. That's the Cupertino widgets and the material widgets. And I had a link here. You can take a look at it at your own time, but it explains how these two different types of widgets differentiate from each other. So the Cupertino widgets are mostly used on the iOS side of things, iOS, macOS, whereas for the material design are mostly the widgets defined by the material theming. And right now we have the expressive material 3 design. I hope most of you have interacted with it, and it's pretty nice to check it out. So what's the difference between built-in and custom widgets? So the built-in widgets are mostly provided by the Flutter SDK, and the example of the text containers, scaffolds, and they are mostly general purpose widgets, and they're limited to properties. And when you want to create your own custom widgets, especially if you're working within a company setup, it's important to create your own custom widgets that matches your own company design guidelines. So these are what we create as developers, and examples could be a custom button, a custom cut toggle, or app specific customization. So this can be probably maybe web based or app based and fully customizable in code. And why should we go ahead with creating custom widgets? So first of all, it improves code organization and customized behavior and design, especially if you have different properties that you want to achieve for the same. For example, you want a card that is clickable or swipeable, and another card that is static and doesn't change. So means that you can customize this to your specific preferred behavior. And another benefit is it enhances scalability and easy testing. So it's easy to write tests for one specific custom widget in case you have one. And yeah, so this is an example of a custom widget. I'm going to show you directly on the code so that it's easy to check. So the first one is button. And this button is of size medium, and the label color is black. The label itself is delete, and the color is purple. And this time what I'm trying to do is just have like an unpressed callback. And quickly on the next custom widget that you can have is this click me button that has a different color, the pink, and a different size, small, and a different label color and the label itself. So primarily, if you use the widget, the button, elevated button widget without customizing it, it means that you'd have to write the same button twice and the same functionality twice if you need to. But because we want to enhance productivity, this is something we want to do away with. And I would quickly show you what I have for the custom buttons. So this is a simple app that typically is here to just showcase the different use cases for the custom widgets. And like I've mentioned, I have the small button and the medium button. So ideally what this does is that normally, this is the button class. Normally you can create a you can create your UI with this style in two different places. But now, because we want to maintain the same flow or structure within one button, then we would have to add these properties that we want. The label, the background color, the label color, on press, padding, which varies from button to button, and the font size, which also varies. So I decided to use the constructor approach so that we define the small size buttons properties of it together, and the medium size buttons properties together, and also the large button size properties together. So this means that all the large buttons would have different sizes and different properties that I need to, in case I need to use them wherever I want. And also this gives us a flexibility of changing whatever font weight, color, text label, how we want it. So if you go to the main, and because this is a custom button and we've created it already, and you can modify this to use the large button, you can write click me to something else, let's do something else. So this makes it easy for you to here it is, I've changed it to a bigger size, and let me just zoom in a little further. Yeah, so I've changed it to a bigger size, and I've changed it to a different text. Whereas if we were not using a custom widget, I would have to clear up the exact widget that I have this and create a new one and change all these properties together. Same to the delete one, because we have one central place for this custom button. Then I can change to whatever colors I want here. Maybe this one, I've never used this, and different background colors, whatever you want. So it gives us that flexibility of doing whatever we want. And if we check this, it just changed to that. So this is the beauty of having your own custom widgets. And with this structure, so I see, within our Flutter team as a company, we normally use the syntax of prefixing with the name of the company. So if your company is XYZ, the I would say the best practice, but most recommended practice is to start, probably if you have your own internal design system, then start with the name of your company, XYZ button or something like that. So that when you use it across multiple projects, it's clear what you are using it for exactly. And you can also change whatever things you want to change. And because we also have the toggle switch at the bottom, so this is a stateful example of a custom widget. And I would go straight back to my slides again and show you the next. Yeah, so like I've mentioned, we've seen the button, a simple overview of a custom button. So the next is a simple overview of a custom toggle. So we use toggles many times, especially in these apps that we use maybe to disable or enable something, and it's quickly updating. So it's also okay to have this within your library as a custom widget so that you have to reuse it whenever you would. And this is the toggle code. So the previous example was a custom colored buttons. Yeah, so this was like a stateless widget example, and like it has been mentioned before, stateless widgets don't change. So it means that if you are on a screen that has a card with a red color or a card with a blue color, that color is bound to remain that way because you're not interacting with it, or you're not going to make any changes to it. That's like a brief brief explanation of stateless widget. But now we also have the stateful bit of it, where I have this example of the custom toggle. So this means that we want something that is mutable, which means something that can change um, based on an interaction or something like that. So if I go to the screen, I should be able to turn this toggle on and off, on and off. So this is an example of a stateful widget. So with our stateful example of a custom widget, you can also customize this to wherever you want. So if this was like a different app, you could label it in a different way that you want, and also change the properties the way you want. So here I had the is toggled as false by default, but you can always have it the way you want. And then we have this toggle method that is going to change depending on when the widget changes or not. And this is the base of this entire toggle. So I'm using switch. Switch is a Flutter widget that enables us to maintain like turning toggles on and off, on and off, and it's using the material design properties. So because we are creating a custom widget, we are just building upon this existing switch widget. And with its use cases, so you can also customize it according to what you want. You can change the active color to something else, maybe red if you want to. So it totally depends with you because it's also customizable. And also like the text, you can change it to whatever you want, because where we are using it, it should be as portable as possible so that you can just use it this way, unless if you have other parameters or other properties that you need to add to it, then you can add to the custom toggle switch itself. Yeah. So we change this to red, like you can see here. And on to the next thing is, this is more on why building custom widgets is really important. And we have most of the time, sometimes spaghetti widget. I would say it's spaghetti widget based on how spaghetti looks generally. So spaghetti is a really nice, I don't know if it's fully Italian, but from my knowledge, it's mostly Italian food. And the way you see spaghetti, like everything, when you cook spaghetti, everything comes in together. And it's kind of difficult to separate each piece of spaghetti separately while eating it. So it's because it's mostly intertwined together, and everything is together. So in relation to the chord aspect of a spaghetti widget, it means that the widget has everything binding together, which means that you have like text, you have cards, you have containers all together and not separated. And the disadvantage of having a spaghetti chord, one, it's difficult to maintain, and it's so hard to write tests for it, and it's also not scalable, and it means that you can also not reuse it anywhere else. So this is why having a spaghetti is bad. Like I've mentioned, first, it's hard to read, reusing is really impossible, and the logic and layout is mixed together, and it makes maintenance a nightmare, especially if you have like a complex app with different functionalities. And I'm going to show you an example of a bad spaghetti code. So, like you can see here briefly, so this is mostly text. Like with this widget, the parent is mostly the column, and it has a container, which is okay. But within it, we have row, which has icons, size box to separate the widgets, space in between, and then the column again, and a text that has the name of the user, the text style, the text, email, uh, probably 20 too fast. Yeah, the text, email, and everything. So this code is too long, but I'll show you where I have it here. So, like I've mentioned, so this is the entire building block of this code. It's a scaffold that has an up bar. At the same time, it has a padding and a column and a container and a row and a column again inside a row. And the texts, two texts, and a space for the height between this and an elevated button. So this code generally is considered a spaghetti code because it means that I cannot really reuse this anywhere else. But when I run it, I can comment this to just quickly run this and enable this. Yeah, so this is the spaghetti code sample. You can have a look at it. It looks okay-ish, but deep down the code, it's like several things put in together, merged in together, which is less scalable, especially if you need the same username, email functionality with a delete account somewhere. So what is likely to be the best approach? So because we have this row here that has the entire name and text and the button. So simply what we can do is to extract this logic into a different, maybe a user login card or something, so that we have all the username, email separated. And then also this, we can use our reusable um, custom button that we had, because it can be difficult when, okay, this is a UI for deleting account. What if we need one for creating an account? It means that we cannot really use this code unless we create another UI, another widget that would have maybe a create account. But because we already have our precious colored button that we had before, which is reusable, so there's no point on having to do that. And I'll show you the cleaner aspect of it. And we would go to the next. For the cleaner version, so with the cleaner version, it means like we can have each widget to do one thing, like I've shared before. Probably extract the login, the username, the name and the username into a separate widget, use the buttons from the reusable buttons and have it within the same functionality. And we can have like a reusable card for the user and something like that. And we can also have like a cleaner, shorter build method if we do this, because now these would be shorter if everything was extracted into simpler widgets. And also for maintainability, it would be easy to test a widget that does maybe this, the user creation flow or something like that, than to test like this entire page together. Because if something breaks, then you have to fix the entire stuff together. But if you have everything separated, then you can write widget tests for each and every section. And that brings us to the cleaner version of this. And the cleaner version is simply like I've mentioned, so we can have this extracted into like a user card or something. Ordinarily, in your design system, probably you can also define the spacing and not use the default spacing from the Flutter resources. So you, within your library, you can define your spacings and gaps and the dimensions within that, so that you can also not put direct numbers like this. But because here we just want to quickly show the reusability aspect of this, then you see we now have like the user card. So this card, what it does is just allows us to have the row of the name of the person and the width. Ordinarily, we can also have this wrapped as a padding for this so that we don't have like a size box for width to separate all this. And then the column for the text in the email. And then other than that, we would simply reuse the colored button for the delete account instead of like starting from using the elevated button and the style and the text and something like that, because here we just have to add the label, the background color, and the void back callback. So this is simply it, and this is like a full view of the cleaner aspect of it. So like I've mentioned, just a simple user card extracted with the colored button and everything like that. And I'll go to the next best practices. Um, so one of the best practices that I've learned over time is each widget should do one thing. So this makes it easy to also advance, write tests and everything, and make the widgets reusable and use named constructors for common variants. So for example, for the labels in buttons, for example, that's like a recommended behavior, and favor composition over inheritance. So this means that when you're building complex UI, it's recommended that you combine simple widgets and not really subclassing, especially if it's like a really complex UI. So it makes sense to do that. And then only use stateful widgets when needed. Like in these examples that we had, the toggle, it's on the other one, the other example. So because for the toggle, you have to turn it on and off. And this is the stateful aspect of it. This brings the changing aspect of it and makes it mutable. So because it has the changing aspect of it, it's only recommended to use stateless widgets when stateful widgets, I mean, when you need to, so that you can also maintain your apps, how is it called, like apps state in terms of like health, and also like the processing aspect of it, so that like you don't process too much. And for isolation bit, only use the stateless widgets you need to when you need to do that. And as I continue, aim for readability and maintainability. So to avoid spaghetti widgets that bloats the build, it's recommended to have like a well-structured small widgets to help you avoid spaghetti widgets that have like lots of things together. And then maybe you can also build a design system. I don't know if this is really feasible on self projects, especially if you are working as a solo developer or a freelancer, because it takes like a really lot of time to build a design system, unless you have like the right guidelines or maybe the time to do that. But it's highly recommended to build a design system. I think it would also be nice if you're doing this as a solo developer, so that over time you have your own um, design system to reference anytime you need a reusable button or reusable cards or reusable colors, theming, and things like that. So with this, if you're working in a company setup, then most companies I've worked with, we always have like a design UI design library for us to reuse these components together, and also be able to create new ones, test new ones, and also like customize them as we go by, because it keeps your UI consistent across different apps, especially if you have different apps, different projects at the same time. And you also need to avoid excessive nesting. So this means that, for example, when you have several layouts that has padding, size box, column, um, like I shared before, like it's best to have them defined probably wrap within a padding or create your own consts of resources, especially for dimensions, and then wrapping column row together. I think it should be avoided at all costs, especially if you're using them together a lot of times, unless you really need it to do that. And then lastly, maybe use the tools from DevTools if you spot performance hits, especially if you are trying to build a complex UI. And I think with the latest Flutter version from the IO, Google IO 2025, we now have this editor icon on VS Code that you can use to edit this. So you can make use of these dev tools um, from your favorite IDEs to help you check whatever the issue is, and also just advance on how you can make your apps better based on that. So these are some of the resources that you can check out later. Flutter widgets. This is simply the widgets that we have within the Flutter library, and then material components and the Cupertino widgets and the Flutter docs. So I'll just share this briefly. So yeah, and something that Flutter team does really well is to have the widget of the week. So you can quickly check what's the latest widget that you can work with for styling or for inputs or something like that. Interactions, animations, motions, assets, images, and like that. And for the material components, you can also check this. This is like grouped really well, and feel free to also check the latest Material 3 Expressive, which is really nice. I haven't tested any of the Material 3 Expressive widgets yet, and feel free to check out that. And if you are iOS specific, you're building specifically for iOS, then you can also check out the Cupertino widgets, which has a good layout to check out. And that's the final bit of it. And I would say thank you for joining, and thank you for hosting me today.
So